Inside your company, there's a system right now that looks like it's working perfectly. Data goes in, AI processes it. Output comes out. Fast, consistent, scalable, until something strange starts happening. Two parts of the system start giving different answers. Not obviously wrong, just not the same. One says approve, the other flags it. One classifies it one way, the other differently. And nobody is quite sure which one is right. So what happens? People step in. They compare outputs. They make a call, they move on. Problem solved, at least in the moment. But that's the point where things start to break. Because now, the system isn't just producing results, it's producing conflict. And that conflict doesn't stay contained. It spreads. A few months ago, a company I worked with had built a fairly advanced AI workflow. Multiple components. One model handling intake, another handling classification, another generating recommendations. Individually, each part worked well, tested, validated, reliable. But when they connected everything together, something changed. Outputs started to diverge. The classification model would label something one way, while the recommendation system assumed something else. Both technically correct within their own logic, but incompatible. That's where the confusion started, because now the system wasn't failing, it was disagreeing, and nobody had designed for that. That's the part most companies miss. AI doesn't just fail. At a certain level of complexity, it starts conflicting with itself. And when that happens, you don't get errors, you get ambiguity. And ambiguity is much harder to deal with because there's no clear signal, just friction, and people inside the company have to resolve it manually. You've probably seen something like this. Two tools giving slightly different outputs, two dashboards not fully aligning, two systems interpreting the same data differently. Nothing breaks, but something feels off. That's the signal. And this is an AI clone, by the way, on purpose, because this is exactly how we use AI inside our own work. I run Datawonder. We build AI systems for companies that want to automate complex processes and make sure they actually hold together under real conditions. Insurance, accounting, healthcare. And this exact pattern shows up as soon as systems become more interconnected. Here's why this happens. Every AI system operates on its own internal assumptions. What inputs mean, how data is structured, what correct looks like. Those assumptions are rarely identical. And when systems are isolated, that's fine. But when you connect them, those differences start interacting. And that's when conflicts emerge. Not because something is broken, but because everything is working in slightly different ways. That's the paradox. The more advanced the system becomes, the more likely it is to produce internal disagreement. Let me give you a concrete example. In one healthcare organization, they used AI to assist with patient intake and triage. One system categorized incoming cases. Another suggested next steps. Individually, both systems performed well. Or when they were used together, edge cases started appearing. A case would be classified as low priority, while the recommendation system suggested immediate follow-up. Not often, but enough. So what did the staff do? They started reviewing those cases manually. At first, only the obvious ones, then more, then eventually, almost every case that felt even slightly uncertain, because they couldn't fully trust the system anymore. That's where it breaks. Not in accuracy, in alignment. Because once systems start conflicting, people become the integration layer. And that's not scalable. That's invisible work, and it grows. Because every new component you add increases the number of possible conflicts. And most companies don't track that. They track performance, not interaction. So from the outside, everything still looks like progress. More automation, more capability, more output. But inside the system, complexity is increasing faster than control. And eventually, that imbalance becomes visible. Not as a crash, but as friction. More checks, more decisions, more hesitation, until someone asks, "Why does this feel harder than before?" And there's no clear answer, because nothing is technically wrong. That's the dangerous part, because now leadership starts making decisions based on systems that don't fully align, scaling them, relying on them, building more on top, while the underlying conflicts remain unresolved. That's how small inconsistencies become structural problems. And by the time they surface clearly, you're dealing with a system that's difficult to untangle. This is where most AI strategies hit a ceiling, not because the technology stops working, but because the system becomes internally inconsistent. And once that happens, progress slows down, not visibly, but operationally. So, what actually prevents this? It's not about making each component better, it's about making them align. You need shared definitions, shared assumptions, shared understanding of what correct means, and you need to test systems together, not just individually. Because integration is where the real complexity lives, not in the components themselves, and someone needs to own that layer, not the models, the system as a whole. Because once AI starts conflicting with itself, you don't have an AI problem. You have a system design problem, and those don't fix themselves. I'm curious if you've seen this. Different parts of your system producing outputs that don't fully align, where everything works individually, but together it becomes harder to trust. And if that's happening inside your company, that's exactly the kind of problem we solve. You can book an introduction call using the link below.